Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari 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 Jai Gopi Janavallabha Jai Girivaradhari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Jai Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari Yashodarandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodarandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari
Very good. Namaste, everyone. Thank you very much for leading that beautiful bhajan. That is my favorite of all bhajans. Definitely way up there. Jai Radha Madhava. And with that, let's begin. And let's do this a little bit differently. I'm going to say the usual things that I say, but when I say them, how about if I say and then everyone here repeats? All right? Jaya Shriman Narayana. Everyone.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Suravangsha Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Om Hri Om.
Om Hari Om.
Very good. Wonderful. Namaste, everyone. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here with you this week for our weekly live stream Satsangha. And I apologize for not being able to do the last 2 weeks. I was actually out of town. I was in New York City. This was not something that we publicized in any way, but I was in New York City for approximately a week or so. Now I can tell people now that I am back here in Omaha. And it was a truly wonderful trip. The truth of the matter is I went for personal reasons. It was to see family. Half of my family are still living in the New York City area, New York, New Jersey, Howard Beach, etc. So I went there primarily to see them, not really to give any grand lectures or talks or anything like that, but just for personal reasons, just to see my family. But again, I was there for approximately a week or so. I'm back now, and now things will resume in every way. And what we're going to be doing today is very specifically, we're going to be doing Q&A. We're going to be doing questions and answers, where for the next approximately hour or so, I will be taking questions from people. Let me just say before we begin with questions and answers, just a few very, very quick announcements. First of all, an update on Radical Universalism. As people know, Radical Universalism is a book that I wrote a long time ago, actually. It started as an essay in 2003 or 4. It became a book in 2007. And now we are reissuing a new and expanded and re-edited, practically rewritten edition of Radical Universalism. The full title is Radical Universalism, Are All Religions the Same? That will be the name of this new edition. And the writing has been done for some time. I've actually moved on to writing new books, Be Strong specifically. And the proofreading is done. Right now, the cover design is being done. And then after that is the actual publishing work. So let's say, without giving an exact date, Radical Universalism will be available in, let's say 4 weeks, roughly, something like that. It just depends on how long it takes to complete the new cover of the book, as well as do everything that's necessary to actually upload and publish the book. It will be available both in print edition as well as Kindle. And let me just say, this will be the most important release of a book that we have done in quite some time. This will be the most overtly philosophical work that I've released in maybe a dozen years since releasing Sanatana Dharma, the Eternal Natural Way. You know, I've released many books since then on a variety of topics, but this one will be very overtly philosophical. And when I say philosophical, I mean including symbolic logic and propositional analysis and quite literally syllogisms and syllogisms. This is going to be a philosophical work in which now, with the expanded scope of the work, I'm actually doing 2 things with this work. First, proving conclusively, beyond any shadow of a doubt, philosophically, to the point where no one in the future will ever be able to question this again. I prove that all religions are not the same. And again, so conclusively, from every angle conceivable philosophically, to the point where in the future, if someone makes the claim that all religions are the same, that's a dishonest person. Because the book is going to prove this conclusively, that that is a false statement in every way whatsoever. That's the first thing that radical universalism is going to do. The second thing is something that really has never been done. Both of these tasks have never been done in book form by anyone. The second thing that this book is going to do is it is going to provide a complete analysis, both historically as well as philosophically, of the differences between two now competing phenomena. That is, on the one hand, authentic, traditionalist, Vedic-based Sanatana Dharma versus what is called academically Neo-Hinduism, i.e. Hinduism the way it is practiced today. They're not the same. There is a radical distinction between the two. Anyone who has studied Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma for even a little bit of time has seen this. However, people have been confused as to why this is the case. Indeed, what we as practitioners of Vedic-based Sanatana Dharma, what we know this religion to be, versus what many modern Hindus say that the religion is, we have seen that there's a radical disconnect between the two in so many ways, as far as ideas, as far as practice, etc. Well, while many people have seen this, very few people understand the roots of this distinction that is there. Well, in this new book that will be coming out, Radical Universalism, I explain this with more depth than anyone ever has in writing. And again, conclusively, not speculation, but I explain exactly what the differences are and why historically it came about. I literally look at the historical figures who created what is now called Neo-Hinduism and how it indeed branched away from pure Sanatana Dharma. Well, what we are following in the ISDS is that pure Sanatana Dharma, not anything that branched away from it. So again, that's the second thing that this very important book does. So again, the book should hopefully be released in maybe 4 weeks, give or take, something like that. And when it is released, it will be one of the most important books that we will have ever released in the history of the ISDS. Even though it's the second edition, again, this second edition is nothing like the first. It's expanded by about 60 pages, which alone is a very big deal. But again, even the focus of the book has changed from one focus to now a dual focus. So Radical Universalism. Look for it in about 4 weeks or so. The last thing that I want to say is the very last book that we released, which is Interregnum. Again, it's been weeks since this book has been released. It's been, how many weeks? Maybe 6 weeks or so, something like that. It's still our best-selling book by far. I can still say this. It is selling more than all of our other books combined. With all of our new releases, that seems to be what happens. So indeed, the growth of our book publishing is truly, and with everything that this word means, exponential in growth. It's been amazing. We released the Introduction to Sanatana Dharma. That sold more than all of the previous books combined. Then we released Principles of Perfect Leadership. That then sold more than all the other books combined, including the introduction book. This now is selling more than all of our other books combined, including the previous 2 that were released. So it's truly amazing. People have found tremendous value in Interregnum for many reasons, including the fact that it is a commentary on 3 verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam that were first written down 5,000 years ago. And yet, despite that, when you read these verses, and especially my commentary on the verses, they seem to be speaking about the year 2023 and everything that is happening right now. So this is a book, one could say, of prophecy, where if we want to understand what is happening in our world today, the craziness. And we know it's crazy. Indeed, a person would have to be crazy to not understand that the world has become crazy. The world has become crazy, politically, socially, as far as entertainment, in every way imaginable. This book explains why. What is needed in order to come through to the other side, to come through the darkness and into the light. What is needed are leaders. Leaders, leaders. And that's what this book talks about in very great depth. So with that, I am going to stop here with my announcements. And again, let's jump into questions and answers. If anyone out there has any sincere, and they have to be sincere. If you have sincere questions about Sanatana Dharma that you can ask with humility, it will be my pleasure to answer any questions that you have. And with that, I'm going to turn to the chat and see what questions there are. Very nice. I see someone jumped the gun a little bit, which is okay in this case. And someone asked a question as I was still making the announcements, but I will answer it actually. It's a good question. This is from Michael Choi, and it is Namaste Sri Acharyaji. I have been reading the Dharma Manifesto, and the importance of Sanskrit has come up. What is the best way to learn Sanskrit in the U.S. for ourselves and especially our children? Very good. Let me first start with telling you what is not the best way to study Sanskrit, because I did this. I studied Sanskrit in every way, actually. Do not study it academically. In other words, don't go to a major university and study Sanskrit, which I did. Again, I studied it both traditionally. I studied it through what's called the Ashtadhyayi. I also studied it truly academically in graduate school with one of the best Sanskritists in the nation. Gudrun Buhnemann is her name. You can look her up. She's at the University of Wisconsin, Madison, and I studied Sanskrit with her very intensively for 4 years. And this is why I can say, try to avoid going to a major university and studying Sanskrit for several reasons. First of all, they will teach it to you as a dead language. Let me tell you, let me just give you a few little, just a little personal aside. When I began studying Sanskrit in graduate school, it was, the beginning class, whatever it was, Sanskrit 1. And there were maybe 25 students in the class when we began. 3 months later, there were 5 students left, and I was one of them. And the main reason why is because, and you could just kind of tell by conversing with many of the students, their idea, this being Sanskrit, was that, they will be learning a spiritual language. So they would be learning, how to pronounce and mantras and all sorts of wonderful things like this. Instead, what they discovered was that it was taught indeed as a cold, clinical class to teach the grammar of a dead language. Academia today is almost 100% atheistic. When I say atheistic, I mean militant atheists. I mean they see religion as their enemy. The only exceptions would be if you go to a religious university, I would imagine. Maybe a Catholic university. Even I went to a Catholic university. Even Catholic universities tend to be quite atheistic. But this is the thing, is that unfortunately, if you take a graduate level Sanskrit class thinking you're going to be learning a spiritual language, you're going to be very disappointed. So don't do that. Plus, it is intense. We took 9 months studying, memorizing grammar alone, to the point where we were actually told, don't even worry about pronunciation. We don't care how things are pronounced. Just memorize, 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 memorize grammar. So again, not fun. Rather, what I would suggest is this. And, I don't recommend people's courses or businesses or anything like that lightly. But there is something called the American Sanskrit Institute. It's run by Vyas Houston out of New York, the state of New York, and it is quite good. I would recommend doing that. I would also recommend very specifically the word that I mentioned before, Ashtadhyayi. Ashtadhyayi is a Sanskrit grammar work written by Panini a very long time ago. Don't ask me when, not because I don't know, but because no one knows. Some people say at least 2,000 years. Some people say as much as 3,000 years ago. No scholar really knows the date that this was written, but it's very, very ancient. This is the traditional method of learning Sanskrit, which I also did. In fact, I did the Ashtadhyayi before graduate school, so I had a very nice advantage when I started graduate school and when I started studying Sanskrit in graduate school. If you can get your hands on this book, the Ashtadhyayi, you memorize it And it is a sutra. It's a sutra form of literature. When you memorize it, you then have memorized every single rule, traditional sandhi rule, every single grammatical rule of Sanskrit. And then it becomes a useful tool that you have in your memory, in which now that you begin to study, everything else, deeper grammar, begin to study words, compounds, compound phrases, etc., it becomes very easy. But again, American Sanskrit Institute, look them up, they're quite good. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. Give me a moment and I'll see if there are any other questions here. Good, very nice. Here is a nice question from Love Conqueror. It is Namaste Acharyaji, my respectful obeisances to you, and likewise, would you please speak on the application of Vaishnava tilak, specifically advice on when it is appropriate or effective practically to Vaishnavas? Very nice, very good question actually. And let me speak about this because it's something that I don't believe I've spoken about in the past. For those individuals who are not aware of what is meant by this term, it's actually tilaka, there is an A on the end. This is the symbol that Vaishnavas will wear on their forehead. Right now I'm not wearing one, and you'll see that, let's say roughly guesstimating 80% of the time I don't. Once in a while you'll see me wearing Vaishnava tilak. And the reason why sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, I follow very much in the footsteps of my guru, B.R. Sridhar Maharaj. Whenever you see images of him, first let me back up. B.R. Sridhar Maharaj is the Vaishnava Acharya par excellence. Prabhupada, if you understand who Prabhupada is, the founder of ISKCON, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, the most important guru ever to set foot from India into the United States or the Western world. Prabhupada called my guru his guru. He said, I consider Sridhar Maharaj to be my guru. What to speak of the benefit that you may have from his association. That's an exact quote that Prabhupada said about my guru, that Prabhupada considered my guru his guru. And my guru, 90% of the time when you see images of him, he's not wearing tilak. Now, what does this mean? Well, that means that tilak certainly is of importance at certain times, in certain circumstances, etc. At other times, it's something that is more symbolic than anything. First, let's back up. Love Conqueror, let me apologize if I end up going into this a little bit more in depth than you wanted, but I will. First of all, what is the purpose of tilak? The reason why people wear tilak is several purposes. The first of which, interestingly, is because Sriman Narayana himself wears tilak. In other words, you see Vishnu, you see Lakshmi Devi, and they're wearing tilak. So number one, we wear tilak in imitation of them. The second reason is to show the world that we are Vaishnavas. Now, having said this, why is this of importance? Well, when you are a traditional Vaishnava, and when I say traditional, I mean this in the true sense of that term. I mean, let's say living in South Asia 500, 1,000, 10,000 years ago. So living especially in a Vedic society, a Vedic civilization. The reason why you wear a tilak is to show indeed the world, that is society around you, all of whom understand the symbolism. You're showing them that you are specifically a Vaishnava, a devotee of Vishnu. So this is why it is worn, traditionally. Now, being in the Western world, I have told my disciples this, that when it comes to symbolism, no, as much as we wish it was the case, we are not living in a Vedic civilization, where if you wear a tilak, 99.9% of people, 100% of people would understand what it meant. Now you are lucky if 1 out of 1,000 people understands what it means. So I don't force my disciples to go to their job in a lawyer's office or as a professor or somewhere else wearing tilak. That would be silly. a silly thing to do. I don't have them go to their business meetings, go to the restaurant that they own, etc., wearing kurta and dhoti, etc. So I have left it up to my disciples how much of the symbolism they wish to attach to their daily appearance. This is the case for myself as well. Sometimes I wear the tilak, sometimes I don't. I am Sri Dharma Pravartaka Acharya. If I'm going to the supermarket because I ran out of milk, I'm not going to be dressed as an Acharya with tilak on. Why? It's not the embarrassment of it. You see, I actually spent years doing that without embarrassment, and not in Omaha, in New York City, in Manhattan, where I would indeed go to the grocery store with a shaved head and tilak on. So it's not a matter of embarrassment. It's a matter of acknowledging that I am a Westerner in the West, number one. Number two, we also must use skillful means in order to teach others. Why have barriers such that now that I present myself to a normative audience of individuals, almost none of who understands what tilak means, now I've created a barrier, and instead of listening to what I'm actually saying, what's in their mind is what's that on his forehead? What's that on his forehead? What's that on his forehead? So that's why 80% of the time you will see me not wearing tilak. It's because I want you to hear my words, not stare at my forehead. Now, all that being said, when is it appropriate to put on tilak? Whenever you feel so inspired, but especially in the morning, let's say when you do your sadhana. In fact, this is traditionally when tilak is applied. In fact, tilak is applied to 12 different places on the body, not just the forehead. And there are mantras that are done for all 12 places in which you put the tilak on. But when you do your sadhana, if you feel so inspired, you can have that in fact be a part of your sadhana, where you have the tilak and you say the mantra and you put the tilak on. You put the tilak on all the various places, etc. So that's when it would be appropriate. Otherwise, again, we do things differently. We are primarily Westerners, and we take pride, enormous pride, in the fact that we are Westerners. And what we try to bring together is A, the fact that we are Westerners, and B, the fact that we wish to follow the essence of traditional and authentic Sanatana Dharma in every way. And we bring that together perfectly. So, I hope that answers the question. Very good. Namaste Acharyaji. Which other scriptures besides the Brahma Vaivarta Purana talk about the coming mini golden age? There are several different places, including Mahabharata, where it indeed talks about the mini coming golden age, and it gives the year of 10,000 years. This is another reference that very few people talk about. I believe maybe it was the last live stream, I forget when, where I mentioned that the Brahma Vaivarta Purana is not the only place where this is mentioned. This is the place that is mentioned by 99% of individuals who reference the mini golden age that's coming. They all know about that prediction. But it's also in Mahabharata. It's also in the Kalachakra Tantra, which is not a Vedic scripture, by the way, I must say this, but which is a very, very important philosophical and historical document. It's actually considered Buddhist, but in there is a lot of actually very invaluable and accurate information about many things, including the arrival of Kalki himself, including the mini golden age, including the war between Abrahamism and Dharma, including the story of Shambhala, including mention of the Vajra Varna, the fifth Varna, and on and on and on. So the Kalachakra Tantra, even though it's not Vedic per se, it's actually considered to be a Buddhist scripture. It is a Buddhist scripture, the historical layer of which goes back so far to the point where its information is almost 100% Vedic, philosophically, as far as history, etc. So mentioned in there as well. So again, there are several places where this is mentioned. good. I will just read this comment from Robin because it's a very, very beautiful comment. Fortunate is whoever hears the Guru, for when beings in this universe struggle for what time destroys, he will be on the joyful path to know the eternal. I offer my obeisances to that spiritual master. Indeed, we offer our obeisances to all such merciful spiritual masters. Thank you for that wonderful comment. Very good. Here's another nice comment. I've decided that today, in addition to reading actual questions, I'll also read some of these comments as well. Because in the past, as you know, that we always have wonderful comments, and I'll read maybe 1 out of 10 of them. But today I'll read a little bit more. This is from Stilgar, and it is Namaste Acharyaji. Lovely to have you back. Thank you for Interregnum. It's most enlightening. Very much looking forward to the next release. Thank you very much. And let me say that, yes, I've heard at this point many dozens and dozens of wonderful comments about Interregnum, this last book that we just put out. And indeed, if you have not gotten a copy yet, believe me, you'll be very happy when you do. Very good. Blue Suzaku, Namaste Sri Acharyaji, blessings unto you. What was the name of the bhajan that was sung at the beginning of this live stream? Very generally, it's called Jaya Radha Madhava. If you look that up, you will find it. Jaya Radha Madhava. There are many versions of it online, especially if you go to YouTube, including several videos where Prabhupada himself is singing it. It was also one of Prabhupada's favorite bhajans as well. And there are different melodies in which you can sing it as well, quite a few. This was Savitri who sang this melody, and in fact this melody, if you don't mind my telling people, this is a melody that we actually learned from one of my disciples who was from India. Premananda was his name. And very sadly he passed away a few years ago. But he had known this song. It's a very famous bhajan that has been done for a very long time in many places throughout India. And when we began doing our weekly satsanghas here at our temple about 13 years ago, I would often sing that song, and I would do it in a style similar to how Prabhupada sang it. But then I remember Premananda asked, "Oh, can I please lead it?" And we said absolutely, and he led it in this beautiful way that you just heard Savitri lead it. And it was a melody which, even though I had sung the song for maybe 35 years previous to hearing his version, I had never heard this version before. This beautiful melody. So we have carried on this tradition of singing it now the way that Premananda used to when he was with us. So that's the song. But again, if you look it up, you can find different versions sung by different people, including Prabhupada. And of course, that's the most powerful. There are at least 2, maybe 3 videos where Prabhupada is singing this, and it's always very powerful. Very good. And let me see if there are any other questions. Very good. Here is a question from Just Me, and controversial, but what can you do? The question is it true ISKCON is corrupted? Let me answer this in depth and with a lot of delicacy, not because I care about controversy. Delicacy because I don't want to hurt the feelings of any sincere Vaishnavas who are out there. Because when you talk about ISKCON, there are several layers of ISKCON, and trust me, I understand ISKCON probably better than any human being alive, and I don't say that lightly. I was a member of ISKCON for many years. In the late 70s, early 80s, I joined ISKCON a few months after Prabhupada left the planet, actually. So I saw both the original ISKCON, when it was almost 100% Prabhupada disciples in every single temple, but then I saw what happened after, so I was an eyewitness. I also studied ISKCON academically in graduate school. I gave talks to literally audiences of 50, 100, 200 professors on papers that I wrote about various aspects of ISKCON and the Hare Krishna movement. So I know ISKCON better than probably any human being alive, including any member of what's called the GBC. So I can say this: ISKCON exists in several different layers. And just to state this very simply, there are the innocent, very sincere, common devotees who are there on the one hand. Then on the other hand, there's, let's say, middle management. Individuals who are leaders in one way or another, but again, in a middling sort of way. Oh, they might be a temple president, vice president, they might be a Sankirtan leader, they might be a Bhakta leader, etc. You see, I know all the institutions that exist within ISKCON. They might be something like this. They might be in charge of a project or something like that. And then there are the top leaders that consist primarily of gurus, sannyasis, and GBC members. Let's say GBC meaning Governing Body Commission. So these are the three layers, generally speaking. There are more, but let's just stick with those. When it comes to the lower layer of just sincere devotees who, let's say, live in a temple, they do all the seva, etc. They sincerely come to Mangala Artik, they come to all the kirtan, etc. They do all the grunt work. The vast majority of these individuals are nothing but good, sincere Vaishnavas, and we offer our obeisances to them. Now, when it comes to middle management, that's mixed. Some of them also are very sincere. Others are not. Others are as radically corrupt as you can imagine, and probably a little more than you can imagine, actually. Now, when it comes to the top leaders of ISKCON, many of whom I knew and had private conversations with over decades, actually, including one person. I won't even state the person's name, but let me just say in the early 90s, he was the president of the GBC. And I remember he and I had a 2-hour private meeting in Chicago. He wanted to meet me because he had a clue of who I was back then. And I was just a student at Loyola University, but he requested to meet with me. And we had a good talk. And he was generally a good person. He was kind of a reformer. So we had a very blunt talk about the problems in ISKCON, and he agreed with every single thing I had to say. But other than that one individual, when it comes to the top leadership of ISKCON, the GBC, the gurus, the vast, vast majority of those individuals are corrupt. In one way or another, they are either corrupt in who they are, that is, they are not following the 4 regulative principles, usually falling down on one of them specifically, you can guess which one, or they are individuals who they are motivated by name and fame, truly by ego, by false ego, by ahankara, or they are individuals who have ideologically warped ISKCON to the point where they have tried to transform it from what it was in Prabhupada's time, which was a radically conservative, traditionalist, authentic Vedic movement, to now something that is woke. To the point where some ISKCON gurus will do gay marriages, etc. These people are corrupt at the very top levels of ISKCON. And let me tell you, one individual who was not, and he was not in the top layer, and indeed he really had no position of, let's say, authority other than true spiritual authority, was my very good friend, Indradas Prabhu. And I'm sorry for going on about this, but I need to say this. This is something that my close devotees know about me, about my personal history, but that I've never said in public. Today, Indra has become, especially now that he's no longer with us, kind of a celebrity in ISKCON circles. Everyone talks about Indra Prabhu. He was so wonderful. Oh, let's listen to his kirtans, etc., etc., etc. And this is something I've never stated publicly. I was his first karatala player when he was living in New York in the early 1980s. I knew Indra intimately. He was one of my best friends before he left New York because he saw the corruption in the ISKCON temple there, which he and I talked about extensively. And he moved finally to Vrindavana, where he spent the rest of his life. until he finally passed away, roughly 5, 6, 7 years ago. I forget when it was. But indeed, I was with Indra in the early 1980s at the Brooklyn ISKCON temple, when the other Prabhupada disciples and the leaders of the temple considered him to be kind of a nutty person. They didn't understand what a pure devotee was. Indra was a pure devotee even back then. When I was a late teenager, 20 years old, and I would hang out with Indra Prabhu all the time. And I remember when he created his first temple on wheels, I was with him. Probably no one knows this about Indra, all the people who are Indra fans. But how he started with his kirtan and bhajans was he bought an old truck that had doors that opened on the side, and he did this alone. He had very little help because, again, the leaders of the ISKCON temple just tolerated him. He created out of fiberglass beautiful facades that looked like the inside of a temple. He stuck them to the inside of these doors so that when they opened, they would now be on the side. Inside the truck, again, he made it look very beautiful. And what he would do, and I helped him with this, we would go to Jackson Heights, Queens, which was the Indian neighborhood in Queens. And he would park the truck right by the sidewalk, open it up, so that now people walking by would look, and it would look like a temple. He would sit there with his harmonium. I would sit next to him with the karatalas. Other devotees would have, mridangam, maybe some more karatalas, etc. And we would do bhajan for hours in the Indian community. Maybe another devotee handing out information, etc., etc. And Indra and I did this for maybe 1 or 2 years, something like that, until he finally left and went to India. So people don't know this when they speak about Indra. Indra was one of my best friends as a devotee. And indeed, I was his very first karatala player. Karatalas are the only Vedic instrument I know how to play. I can't play harmonium or mridangam. I play karatalas, but I play them very well. And I played my karatalas for Indra for about 2 years. Until finally it got to the point where things got so bad in the Brooklyn temple that even Indra decided to leave and to move to Vrindavana, to India. And it was after that that he began to become known by newer devotees. But again, I was there with him from the very beginning. And let me just say that, I kept up with him. I understood. I knew, he was getting more and more famous all the time, and for good reason. I don't say this lightly. Again, anyone who's been with me for some time, I don't say such things lightly. From the moment I met Indra as a youth, I recognized he was an absolutely pure devotee. And when he finally died the way that he did in Vrindavana, it devastated me as it did anyone who loved him. It devastated me how he died in Vrindavana, why he died the way that he died. And let me tell you, for those of you who have listened to Indra's bhajans on video, audio, etc., and who recognize the purity of this man, this pure force of bhakti, let me tell you that my friend Indra lives on. He's alive through the International Sanatana Dharma Society. Indra was my friend, and I will remember him always. And part of what I do is also dedicated to him. So that's ISKCON. That's my comment on ISKCON. If we had more Indras in ISKCON, indeed, Indras leading ISKCON, ISKCON would be a pure force again. In the meantime, we have the purity, the same purity here in the International Sanatana Dharma Society. So with that, let's go on to a few more questions and or comments. Very good. Yeah, here's a question from the Swede, and it's about the Lunar Dynasty. And basically, you're asking me to speak a little bit more about the Lunar Dynasty, who are some of the kings, etc. Let me say, there's not much to say about them. I don't talk about the Lunar Dynasty very much because very few people do, because it's considered to be not a very important royal dynasty. It counts for maybe less than 5% of kings. In fact, I'm being generous. As far as the list of kings, that you can easily just find online. But again, not much more that I really want to say about the Lunar Dynasty. It's the Solar Dynasty that is primary, that is of importance, and that for many, many, many different reasons. The Lunar Dynasty is considered to just be a tiny offshoot of the Solar Dynasty. So as far as important kings, indeed, you can go to Wikipedia and look that up. People know I joke about Wikipedia. Whatever you do, don't go to Wikipedia. If you just want a list of the kings in the Lunar Dynasty, Wikipedia actually is quite accurate. Go there and it has the list of kings, and there are only a few of them. But again, it's the Solar Dynasty that is of importance and that we represent today. Very good. Nice. Love Conqueror says, you answered my question regarding tilaka, now spelled correctly, with an A on the end, deeper than I could conceive. Thank you, dearly Acharyaji. Absolutely my pleasure. Very good. Very good. Here's a nice question. Namaste Acharyaji. In the Vedic perspective, do Yahweh and Allah exist as actual entities? If so, are they asuric? Yes and yes. Yes and yes. These are real beings. Yes, indeed. And to answer your second question, also yes, without any doubt whatsoever. Very good. And just me, I believe I answered your question pretty much as in depth as a human being can. So if you're not satisfied with my answer, that's your misfortune. But I did answer the question very nicely. Very good. Rune Revival asks, what is the fifth Varna? Sorry if you spoke about that earlier. I missed the start. No, that's perfectly fine, actually. The fifth Varna is something that I speak about in a few of my books, actually. It's what's called the Vajravarna. And let me first give a little bit of background information. It's generally recognized that there are four primary Varnas that are spoken about. That is, being a Brahmana, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra. But then above them all, there is a fifth Varna that is discussed very rarely, but it is discussed in a few places. That's called the Vajra Varna. Vajra meaning thunderbolt or meaning diamond. Vajra means literally both. And what this fifth Varna is a Varna that is above even the Brahminical class. And the Brahminical class is considered to be the very highest Varnas. What the Vajra Varna are the Varna of Chakravartins. So in other words, this is a special class of individual who they bring together in their person the very best qualities of both the Brahmana and the Kshatriya, of both the individual who is a sage, who is a philosopher, who is a yogi, a spiritual person, a rishi on the one hand, but also the qualities of an individual who is a Kshatriya, that is, who is a warrior, who is a ruler, who is an administrator, who is royalty, who is a king. And what the Vajravarna is an individual who, again, perfectly brings together both of those elements in who they are. That's the Vajravarna. There are other terms for this. It's also called Rajarshi. So Raja, Rishi, Rajarshi is how you pronounce this compound phrase. That is an individual who is a perfect Raja, perfect king, but also perfect Rishi, perfect sage together. Also Chakravartin. When you hear the term Chakravartin, the Buddha was considered to be a Chakravartin. Rishabhadeva was considered to be a Chakravartin. Yudhishthira was considered to be a Chakravartin. And there are hundreds and hundreds of others. Indeed, who is it? The Yellow Emperor, I believe, of China, who goes back approximately 5,000 years, was considered to be a Chakravartin. That is, he was an individual who ruled in accordance with Tao, who ruled in accordance with Dharma. For that matter, King Arthur, one could say, was a Chakravartin, a person who was both radically spiritual and radically royal. So again, there have been many of such individuals, not just in quote-unquote India. We've seen them in China. We've seen them in Southeast Asia. We've seen them throughout the length and breadth of Europe, throughout European history, etc. So this is what the Vajravarna is. It's the most rare of individuals. So as you go up in the Varnas, the number of individuals represented by each Varna gets smaller and smaller. So you have the Shudras. Well, there are a lot of Shudras. It's been estimated that in any given society, possibly even 50 to 60% of people are Shudras. Then you have the Vaishyas. There are a much smaller number of Vaishyas. Then you have the Kshatriyas. Then you have the Brahmanas. Brahmanas, if you're lucky, might be 1% of a society. The Vajra Varna is less than even the Brahmanas as far as the number of how many there are. But as far as the quality, they're the highest quality individuals. Very good. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. And with that, I'm just going to see if there are any other questions or comments. William Seaborn, first of all, namaste. I'm very glad that you could make it. Now that we're doing this at 2 p.m. on a Sunday, it's probably, I'm guesstimating 8 or 9 p.m. your time in the UK, so I'm glad that you could make it now. You say, I love Srila Prabhupada, but will probably never join ISKCON. Indeed. This is what I recommend to individuals. We also love Prabhupada. It's a little bit difficult to see, but to my left, there is an image of Prabhupada and Srila Sridhar Maharaj sitting together in a Vyasa-san. In fact, would you mind, could you carefully get that image for me, pass it to me? I just don't want to risk trying to stretch and drop it or something. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Very good. Yeah, stay a little close because I'll give it back to you. Bring it as close as I can to the camera. This is the image that I have to my left at all times. As I'm speaking, this image is right next to me. This is Prabhupada with one of the people who gave me initiation, Bhakti Rakshaka Sridhar Swami. They were god brothers. So Prabhupada is someone, thank you, who, to say I respect Prabhupada would be the understatement of the century. So indeed, we are followers of Prabhupada on the one hand, but on the other hand, yes, we are followers of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. It is the International Sanatana Dharma Society that is carrying forward Prabhupada's vision, and perfectly so. So thank you for saying that, William. Very good. And just give me a few more moments. Just me, you say, thank you for answering my question. My absolute pleasure. James Wallace also says, thank you so much for addressing this, Acharyaji. Again, my pleasure. Haha, very nice. Here's a nice comment. Hare Krishna Acharyaji, watching you live from Ghana. This is my first time and I'm very impressed. Thanks. Dandavat pranams. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your wonderful comment. I truly appreciate it. And let me just say, I'm sure you know this, who just made the comment, but very few others probably do. Sanatana Dharma is growing faster in Ghana than any other nation in Africa, and by leaps and bounds. At this point, a significant portion, it's a minority, but a significant portion of the population of Ghana, which is in somewhat northern Africa, it's not North Africa, it's sub-Saharan, but somewhat north in Africa, a significant minority of native Ghanaians are now following Sanatana Dharma. So again, not Indians who have settled there. No, we're talking about black Africans in Ghana are now following Sanatana Dharma, and you obviously are one of them, so welcome. Very good. Very nice. Here's another nice comment from Berserker. Namaste, Sri Acharyaji. I wish to use the opportunity again to thank you for all, for doing what you do. We who want to know our most true friend are infinitely fortunate to be graced with this opportunity. Thank you very much for that wonderful comment. Here's a good question from James. Namaste Acharyaji. Did the Varnashrama system only begin in the Treta Yuga? How was Satya Yuga's society without Varna Ashrama? That is indeed correct. You are correct, actually, in that. In the Satya Yuga, there was no Varna whatsoever. Now, not to say that there weren't distinctions between people. Indeed, you always see distinctions between people because we are radically persons. We are all individuals, we're persons, so you certainly see distinctions. But at the same time, society was such in the Satya Yuga, and for those who don't know what that term means, that means truly the golden age. So we're talking about millions of years ago, actually. The Satya Yuga, there was no Varna Ashrama system. It did indeed begin with the Treta Yuga. As far as what things were like, how do you state this? How was Satya Yuga society without Varna Ashrama? Perfect. Also, society was perfect in the Treta Yuga with Varna Ashrama as well. See, the Varna Ashrama system is perfect, and it's perfect either way. If things are so pure to the point where people are living so in alignment with nature to the point where you don't even need a system like Varna Ashrama, that is perfection. But then if it gets to the point where indeed the distinctions become pronounced to the point where you now need to organize people in accordance with their psychophysical nature, and thus the Vedic literature gives us a way of doing that known as Varnashrama, that also is perfect, but just in different ways. So I hope that answers the question. Rune Revival says, thank you very much for answering my question. I've only read 2 of your books so far, but I'm looking forward to reading more. Very good. Wonderful. Well, thank you. I don't know which 2 you've read, but let me say you will find them all invaluable. We've put out maybe roughly a dozen books now so far, and we are planning on putting out many dozens of others, actually. So I'm sure you will enjoy reading the rest of them. Yes. Jason says here, I spent some time with ISKCON. They tried to make me accept the edited books. Wouldn't let me bring the originals to class. What'd you say? Wow. Yes, exactly. Yes, ISKCON is not the ISKCON of Prabhupada. The ISKCON of today is not the ISKCON of Prabhupada. This is why we stress, if you're going to read Prabhupada's books, you see there are 2 versions. There are the original texts that were published when Prabhupada was on the planet. Then there are the ones that were, quote-unquote, re-edited. Take the words of the Guru and say, nope, they're not perfect enough. No, we're smart. We're smarter than Prabhupada. We're going to re-edit his books, re-word literally what he said, because we're smarter than him. And that's what ISKCON now pushes, are the re-edited books. No, only read the originals. If you read Bhagavad Gita as it is, read the 1972 Macmillan edition. If you read Srimad Bhagavatam, any of the books by Prabhupada, read the originals, not the edited ones by ISKCON. So, thank you for confirming that very sad fact, Jason. Very good. Just Me says, Prabhupada, our forever well-wisher. Indeed. Yes, indeed. Very good. Berserker, don't worry about your so-called imperfect English. We've spoken. Your English is very good. And yes, there are shortcomings when it comes to any kind of chat platforms. Good. This is an important question, actually. Let me definitely answer this. This is from Stilgar. Let me check the time. We're a little bit over, but I want to answer as many questions as I can. So if we go a little bit over, please forgive me. Put the blame on me. But Stilgar asks, Namaste, is it acceptable to seek association with ISKCON members here in the UK in the absence of ISDS members? Let me deal with this actually in reverse. First of all, nicely, we have a lot of ISDS members in the UK, actually. We just haven't had a chance to seriously organize them yet, which is something that we will hopefully do this year. So we actually have quite a few ISDS members, supporters, initiated devotees, etc., all throughout the UK. When I say all throughout, I mean in Scotland, in Wales, in the UK itself, in England itself, in Northern Ireland, and in Ireland. So we have devotees in all these places. But now to get to the crux of your question, is it acceptable to seek association with ISKCON members? Yes. Again, keeping in mind those three echelons that I mentioned, anyone who's introduced to you as a guru or a member of the GBC, just kind of go like this and sneak away from them. Again, any middle management, be courteous, but especially real devotees. Again, just individuals who are the sincere people who do the actual work, who, they've been a member for a few years and you can tell they're very sincere. Absolutely seek their association as much as possible, because these people are wonderful Vaishnavas in every way. Very good. Very nice. Here's a very interesting question from Robin. It is, Guruji, how can one make use of fiery and intense temperament in service of the Guru and Bhagavan? Should such aspects of one's psychophysical nature be done away with for perfection in service? Very good. And again, I'm going to deal with this actually from with the last part and then go back to the first part. If it is indeed your nature that, as you say, you have a fiery and intense temperament, no, don't think that you should do away with this. Actually, interestingly, I feel that in this day and age specifically, we need individuals who are indeed fiery. But all that being said, you must dovetail it perfectly in devotion. In other words, again, this is a stereotype that people have, that when a person is steeped in meditation for years, when they're very spiritual, they become a fluff ball. They become, speaking as far as men, they become almost effeminate. They become very weak, very passive, etc. No, that is truly a monstrous stereotype. I know for a fact I've studied, oh my Lord, I've studied the personalities of real yogis from the past. When I say real yogis, when I say the past, I don't mean 19th century. I mean in the scriptures. I mean going back 100,000 years. When you look at some of these individuals who are not just a person in Brooklyn going to a yoga class, trying to do meditation in his studio apartment, no. When you look at these individuals who were perfected beings, very often they will be individuals who, on the one hand, they can sit, and if we're talking about 100,000 years ago, indeed, in their ashram, in their cave. They can sit for 5 days in meditation unmoving. They can be in such peace that if you had the blessing of having the ability to sit next to them as they're sitting in meditation, you would feel waves of calm and peace and satisfaction coming over you. And then once they open their eyes and they stand up, if they see an injustice taking place, or if they see someone attacking Dharma, they become like a warrior. And you want to see fire? You want to see real fire? You want to see fiery temperament? Witness a yogi who himself is witnessing an injustice. You will see a fire come from that person's eyes that has the ability, and you'll know it if he wanted it to burn up the universe. So indeed, to have a fiery temperament, especially today in 2023, when we find ourselves as individuals who we are the very last warriors left fighting for Dharma, and we see that around us is so much evil. So much evil, the likes of which, if I were to even just begin to list it, probably the stream would suddenly go black. We wouldn't even be allowed to list all the evils that we see in our world today. We need individuals who, again, when you're in their presence and they're meditating, you feel as if you are bathing in an ocean of peace. But who, when they open their eyes and they stand up and they now go into the world to uphold Dharma, they have to have a fiery nature. Indeed, people have accused me of having a fiery nature. I can tell you, my students here are chuckling a little bit. I can tell you, Prabhupada did. I can tell you, Prabhupada, you will see images of him where you can tell he's not even in this world. He is in such peace. But then I can tell you, you will hear of instances where he is on fire. He's debating with an atheist, and he will not let that atheist crawl away, sneak away in any way whatsoever. He'll confront the atheist in debate and smash him into the ground verbally, unapologetically. So indeed, to have a fiery nature, if you have a fiery nature, and you see, what is meant by this, a fiery nature? That's Shakti. That's Shakti. That's power. That's energy. A power and energy that's just left to do whatever it wants, is not under control, etc., well, that's a danger. That's when you find people who are fiery, but, oh yes, they'll do nothing but cause problems, and they're egotistical, etc. But if, like with any power, like with any energy, you are someone who is disciplined, you know how to use that energy, you have the ability to wield that energy effortlessly and to aim it in the right direction where it needs to be aimed, now you are an individual who is serving God. So indeed, take that fiery temperament that you have, steep yourself in years of meditation. Not so that you'll lose that fiery temperament, but so that on the contrary, you now can not lose it, but use it in God's service in such a way that you too can fight for justice and for Dharma in this world. So I think I answered the totality of your question at this point, so I hope that was helpful. And just give me one moment. Again, we are going a little bit over time, but I want to make sure I'm answering everyone's questions nicely. Good. Here is a good question from Marius GI, Generation Identity. Namaste Acharyaji. Thank you for teaching Dharma and spreading your knowledge. Is there a way of studying Dharma regarding one's personality, Varna, or should everyone approach Dharma the same way? Excellent. This is a didactic question. This is a question as far as education, as far as learning. And let me tell you that traditionally, indeed, how people are taught anything dharmic, anything Vedic, is indeed in accordance with their Svadharma and their Varna and Ashrama. So indeed, there is a difference in how people are taught on the one hand. On the other hand, the fundamentals are the fundamentals. that have to be taught to everyone. So the fundamentals of Sanatana Dharma, that we are infinitely more than just the appearance that we see. We're more than the body, we're more than the mind, that we are an eternal unit of consciousness, that as a unit of consciousness we have God as our source, that God is the source of everything, that God is that which is the perfection of perfection, etc. That being in illusion, which we presently are, we are in this material world, and in accordance with our choices we have karma, so thus we reincarnate, and etc. So certain ethical principles, that we should do our best to be vegetarian, that we should avoid intoxicants, we shouldn't harm people, etc. All these fundamentals should certainly be taught to everyone. But then as far as the more specific knowledge of Sanatana Dharma, that should be taught to individuals in accordance with who they are. So this is why in an ideal educational system, a Vedic Gurukula, an ideal Vedic school, the individual is taken into account. And people are divided, interestingly, a little bit by age, like in the West, but more so, yes, they are divided in accordance with their quality, more than anything. So you'll have, let's say, a general Gurukula, an ashram, a school, where, just to make this, round this off to a simple number, there'll be 100 students, let's say. And let's say that will be divided into 4 classes of 25 students each. Well, what determines who's in which class is less so the age, though again, that has to be taken into account, but more the quality of the individual. How intelligent are they? How much self-control do they have? What are their natural propensities? Indeed, it's hilarious. I mentioned how I was in New York. I came back just a few days ago. I was there for about a week. And when I lived there, very long time ago, there was a school called Automotive High School. And I had explained to a few people that the reason why that school existed was because it was understood. Students are different. For those students who weren't necessarily very academically inclined, they send them to Automotive High School to learn auto mechanics. Other things too, not just auto mechanics. It expanded from there. But I remember when I was in New York just a few days ago, I went through that neighborhood and I was just curious to see, I even said, to the person I was with, I even said, I bet, this is 2023, just to be politically correct, they've changed the name, I'm sure, now it's whatever, Malcolm X High School, whatever. And I go and I was shocked. It was still Automotive High School, which was amazing. They hadn't changed that, even in 2023 in Brooklyn, New York. But what is the point? The point is that, even in the West, at one time at least, it was recognized that some people have a more, intellectual propensity. These kids, they're going to college. These kids, no, they're going to learn a skill. They're going to learn a skill, etc. Well, this is how it's also done traditionally. So all students have to learn the fundamentals of Sanatana Dharma. They also have to all study the scriptures, etc. But as far as how deep they go into a specific Vedic field, that's in accordance with the individual. So I hope that answers the question, Marius. Very good. And I see Sudarshana has addressed Stilgar here, so very good. Definitely get in contact with Sudarshana when you can. He's also in the UK. To answer the Swede, you ask a similar question, whether it's good to associate with ISKCON people. Yes, definitely. Definitely visit the ISKCON temple. Again, associate with the more low-level devotees. Again, the people who are just innocent and sincere. Avoid the leadership as much as you can. Very good. Good. I see a question here from Nitin Tiwari. Are there ISDS members in India? Yes, indeed. We have ISDS members in India. Indeed, I have 2 initiated disciples in Mumbai specifically, but then we also have members throughout the length and breadth of India as well. Very good. Critical optimist, Sri Aurobindo is a neo-Hindu. There's nothing authentic or traditional in anything that he said or wrote, and I know him very extensively. I've actually written works of his that were so dryly philosophical they would put other people to sleep, including commentaries, essays on the Bhagavad Gita, etc. I know Sri Aurobindo quite well. Nothing authentic about him whatsoever. He was a newfangled modernist Hindu, and that's all he was. I believe he was a anarchist terrorist politically before he became quote unquote spiritual, before he fled to Pondicherry, which was a French either colony or protectorate, because he was running away from the British, and it was after that he set himself up as a guru. But no, not an authentic person in any way. Regardless of the fact that I know many Westerners love him, it's because, he's a Westerner, basically. Not literally, he's Indian, but what I mean is he is as modernist a thinker, as progressive a thinker, as a person could have been. There's nothing authentic about Aurobindo whatsoever. Very good. Very good. Death metal sorcerer. All right. You ask a question here, which is actually a good question. It is approximately when will Kalki arrive? I surmise he's the figure in the book of Revelation riding the horse whilst wielding a sword. Jesus is the previous horse-mounted figure before Kalki. Kalki has absolutely nothing to do with the Old or New Testament or the book of Revelation whatsoever. We don't follow the book of Revelation. We don't follow Christianity in any way, shape, or form. We don't mix and match religions. We are exclusively followers of Sanatana Dharma, the most advanced religion on the face of the earth, head and shoulders above whatever would even be considered the second most advanced. As far as Kalki, he will be here at the very end of the Kali Yuga, so over 400,000 years from now. He's not coming in the near future. You won't see him in your lifetime, regardless of what some New Age people say. Some New Age people think he's coming in the next few years, in the next 100 years, that he's already been here, etc., etc. No, every single Vedic scripture, without exception, make it very clear, literally the date that he's going to arrive. You see, this is why I say again and again, it's unfortunate when you have dishonest people who speculate, when speculation is unnecessary. And they tend to be New Age folk. They tend to be people who just want to kind of play games with, throw in a little quote-unquote Hindu work with all my other occult work and blah, blah, blah. These are insincere people who want to pretend that the answers are not there. The Vedic scriptures tell us literally the date. They tell us the names of the parents of Kalki. They tell us where Kalki will appear, etc. Literally his village. They tell us what he's going to do, etc. So he's going to be here over 400,000 years into the future. He's not coming in the near future, and it has nothing to do with Book of Revelations whatsoever. Very good. With that, I don't want to go too much over time, so I may at the most take one or two more questions, and that's about it. So give me a moment, please. Yes, Love Conqueror says approximately 426,000 years. That's accurate. That's correct. And again, just give me a minute. I'm going to skip a bunch of questions and maybe try to answer one or two that I can answer pretty quickly. Again, wonderful comments, wonderful comments. Very good. Let me answer this very quickly for Nitin Tiwari, and it is Namaste Acharyaji. I read your book, The Dharma Manifesto, and Principles of Perfect Leadership. I want to be your student. How can I become your student? Any ISDS members in India? This is what I would suggest. This is the exact route. If you would like to be a serious student of mine, that is a Shishya, eventually take initiation. We do this process in the Vedic way, the traditional Vedic way. In other words, there is not some bureaucracy. Oh, you become a member. After you're a member for 6 months, you do this, and then 2 months later you take initiation. No. I have individuals who have been members of the ISDS for 10 years who I have not yet given initiation to. I have other individuals in the past who I knew them for 6 months. I give them initiation. This is how it's done traditionally. It's not done as a bureaucracy. Rather, this is what I would suggest. If you are not already on there, join the ISDS Discord server, the Dharma Nation Discord server. That is one of our online communities, indeed the primary one. Go on there, ask sincere questions, get to know my students, especially the senior students who are there, and you'll know who those are. I don't need to give you their names. As soon as you're on there, you will know who the senior students are. Be of value, be of service. And let me explain to you that very often the way that a person will take initiation from me is that they act in such a way that they gain my attention. And they do so sincerely. And then that being the case, often I'll contact them and we will talk. That's how it's done. So join the Discord server. Hopefully someone will put the link up on the chat. And in that way, hopefully in the future, we will connect. Good. Very nice. This is maybe the last question that I will answer. And again, just due to time, just due to lack of time. And it is from Siddharth Maini. And Siddharth, very good to see you. We haven't spoken in some time, and that's my fault. I've been extremely busy. But you ask, how does Dharma teach us to think about people from other faiths, sects, religions? Very good. It is not possible to give one broad answer to this, because even from the nature of how you state this, other faiths, plural, sects, plural, religions, plural. Religions, sects, faiths are not all the same. You know, there are not a half dozen world religions. See, people who think they've studied religion, they think there's something called the world religions, and they'll, spew out, oh yes, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, maybe throw in one other for fun. No, there are tens of thousands of religions in the world. Indeed, I was earlier today doing research on the Yazidi, who I know very well, actually. But the Yazidi are a small sect. The Mandaeans are a small sect of Gnostics who still exist in Iraq, who are now living, most of them in exile due to ISIS persecuting them, etc., etc. There are small sects, some of which are thousands of years old, and they'll have 100,000 members. So this is why when we talk about religions, it's not just the 5, 6 so-called world religions. There are thousands of them. This being the case, we have to approach them all individually. So some of them, of course, are dharmic. And the dharmic religions we see as our sister religions. We are very respectful toward them, etc. Those religions, on the other hand, that are adharmic. And again, this is why I wrote Radical Universalism. Religions are not all the same. There are some religions that they may not call themselves Sanatana Dharma, but they're so close to Dharma that they're wonderful, and we embrace them as brothers and sisters. On the other hand, there are some so-called religions that are demonic in nature. They are hateful, they are violent. Everything they believe is the mirror opposite of Sanatana Dharma. That being the case, we keep them at arm's length. Indeed, we wish that our arm could extend by 100 miles, 1,000 miles. We keep them at arm's length, and we want nothing to do with them. And we reject them as adharma, as the opposite of dharma. So, indeed, this is how we approach religions. We look at them individually. So, all this being the case, I will stop here. Just one very quick thing I have to say. Let's see. Very nice. Alibaba. You say, greetings from Portugal. We are from Germany and Austria. We are so grateful for your talks and your books. Wonderful. So I'm assuming so you're a couple from Germany and Austria, presently living in Portugal. Very nice. Wonderful. So welcome. I'm very glad that you're here. Continue, please, to come to our live streams. with that, I am indeed going to stop here because we are way over time. But again, I wasn't here for the last 2 weeks, so I wanted to make sure I had a chance to answer as many questions as possible. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everyone, but that is the nature of time. But I thank you again all very much for being here. Please continue to come to our live streams. Please join and participate in our Discord server if you have not yet done so. Please support our movement, and you can do this by becoming a member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. Go to our main website, dharmacentral.com. When you're there, you'll just look on the menu and you'll see membership. Please consider becoming a tithing member because we need your help. We need your help in every way. We need your donations. We need your volunteer help. We need your support. We need your prayers. We need your association. So please become an official member of the ISDS. Please purchase our books, and again, more coming out. Practically every few months we have a new book coming out, so please purchase our books, and please continue to come back, and more importantly, to practice Sanatana Dharma in your own life in every way that you can. And with that, Namaste. And again, for our congregation here in our temple, we have a temple full of devotees here. I ask you to please repeat after me. Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Suravangsha Jayate.
Suryavansha Jayate.
May Dharma be ever victorious. Evam Bhavatu. May it be so. And with that, everyone, I ask you all, until the next time that we get together, to please take very good care of yourselves in every way.